Hi guys, welcome to my channel or welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be speaking about something a bit different. I am going to be discussing the difference between a language and a dialect. So if this is something that's not interesting to you, then you can leave at this point, but hopefully something that I post in the next few months will be of interest to you. For the purpose of this video, I am going to answer or attempt to answer the question, what is the difference between a language and a dialect? And as a linguist, this is something very difficult to answer, and that's just because a language and a dialect aren't really different from each other. Now, this video will start off with a phrase from Max Weinrich. Hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. But the phrase says, a language is a dialect with an army and a navy. Now, what does he mean by this? Right? When he says that a language is an army and a navy, the army that he's talking about is the economic power that comes with the language, and then he's talking about the political power that comes with the language as well. So those two factors, right, the economic army and the political power navy, makes a language more prestigious. Now, if you notice, most languages are used as official languages of different countries, and these languages are used in the education system, in the political system, and almost all professional facets of day-to-day activities or day-to-day life, right? So a language is a dialect and an army, yes, but that makes it even more difficult to distinguish between what a language is and what a dialect is. Because if we're saying that a language is a dialect, then what makes a dialect different from a language? Is it just the economic and the political power? Is that the only thing that makes a language different from a dialect? Now let's look into two definitions of what a language is before we go into definitions of what a dialect is. Now, a language can be defined as a system of communication or a combination of words in a sentence. And then we have another definition here from Wardhoe 2006. Hope I'm not butchering his name, but he says that a language has been described as what the members of a particular society speak. So if he's saying that a language is what the members of a particular society speak, so are the dialects a language? Because the members of particular societies, they speak different dialects. So are those languages? Right? So the definitions of the terms languages and dialects are very, very similar, and it makes it difficult to define or to differentiate between the two, right? So a popular example of a language per se is, of course, the lingua franca, English, right? People know English to be a language. Now we are going to move on to the definitions of what a dialect is. All right, we have two definitions of what a dialect is. A dialect is a form of language. Again, language is being used in the definition of what a dialect is. This makes it confusing, right? A dialect is a form of a language that is unique to a particular group of people or a region. Again, if it's unique to a particular group of people, if it's unique to a particular region, then are the dialects a language? Because that's what the definition is telling us, right? So let's look at the next definition of a dialect. The Dictionary of Linguistics defines dialect as a variety of a language used by people from a particular geographical region, right? It's a variety of a language that's used by people from a particular geographical area or region. But then if you go back and if you look at what the definition of a language is, it says what the members of a particular society speak, right? So the members of a particular society are also people from a particular geographical area. So, what is the definition for dialect? What is the real definition for a language? Because they sound so similar, and the definition of dialect always includes a language. It has the word language in it. So, what really makes the two different? I'm not seeing it. And a lot of other linguists, they do not see why the two are different, honestly, right? The only thing that makes them different is the army and the navy, the economic and the political power that these languages have. Now let's move on to two criteria that were proposed to distinguish between a language and a dialect. And of course, there are more criteria, but I am just going to discuss two because I don't want the video to be extremely long. So the first criteria is mutual intelligibility, right? So this works on the premise that dialects of the same languages should be mutually intelligible, while different languages aren't mutually intelligible. And what we mean by mutually intelligible is that they can understand each other, right? So they're saying that dialects of the same language, they can understand each other, but if they're talking different languages, then they won't understand each other, right? So if a person is speaking Garifuna and that person does not understand someone who is speaking French, then there is no mutual intelligibility, which means that obviously they are speaking two different languages. But let's just look at the example of a person speaking Belizean Creole to a person who speaks Jamaican Patois, right? They will understand each other. So based on the concept of mutual intelligibility, they would be said to be speaking dialects of the Creole language, and that's why they can understand each other. That's why they're mutually intelligible, right? But this is quite tricky. It's not that simple because there are languages that are mutually intelligible that are considered to be separate languages, right? So it's not it does not conform to the notion of mutual intelligibility that says that different languages are not mutually intelligible. Let's look at the example of Swedish and Norwegian languages, right? They are considered separate languages even though they are mutually intelligible. So we can see that the mutual intelligibility criteria comes with its flaws, right? It's not the one shot that's going to tell you, okay, this is a language, this is a dialect. It is very much confusing, and right there and then you can see that, guess what, there's not much difference. Like, they're finding criteria to help us differentiate, but it's just causing more confusion than anything else, right? So there's also another issue with this criteria because it also works on the notion that people who speak language A may be intelligible to people who speak language B. However, people who speak language B may not be intelligible to people who speak language A. And this can be a result of more exposure to language A in contrast to language B. And this can be seen in the case of English and Belizean Creole, where Belizeans can understand the English language without any issues, but an English-speaking person may find it difficult to understand what is being said in Belizean Creole. So this would require them to pay keen attention, to decipher what a person is saying in Belizean Creole. And this can just be a result of Belizeans being exposed to the English language in media, in schools, in businesses, but the English speakers may not be exposed to the Belizean Creole language, which makes it non-mutually intelligible to them, right, in certain instances. So it's not a clear-cut criteria to differentiate between a language and a dialect. And then we have the second criteria, which is standardization. And standardization is defined as the process by which languages become codified. And when we speak about languages becoming codified, we're talking about languages, having set or standardized spellings, grammars, books, and dictionaries, right? So once a language has a standardized form, it becomes possible to teach it in schools or in different business places, basically. But what standardization does is that it takes a dialect, right, and transform it into a language through the development of a written form. So a popular example of this here in the Caribbean or in Belize is that English is a language and Creole is a dialect, right? People often use this example because Creole is not standardized. Now, English is a standard form that is used in almost all books and instructions, businesses and schools here in Belize, but the Belizean Creole in specific has recently developed a Creole dictionary that seeks to make a shift. So once Creole has a written form, are people going to consider it a language? And let me just say that Creole is a language. I know Creole is a language, and that's a fact, right? So I'm not saying that Creole is a dialect. I'm saying what people continuously say, that Creole is a dialect and English is a language, because English is used as a method of instruction in Belize, right? It has a written form, but Creole is now starting to have a written form as well. So will it be regarded a language? So that's also something to consider. So how do people choose which languages are going to get a written form? Of course, these languages that are given a written form were once dialects. And this also goes back to the Army and the Navy, right? There's no difference between a language and a dialect. The only thing is the economic and the political power that comes behind, or that enforces the particular language that people want to make a language, or the dialect that people want to transform into a language. But in concluding, there's not much difference between a language and a dialect. It's just super confusing to differentiate between the two. And even some of the criteria that they give to differentiate between a language and a dialect, they intertwine, and there's exception to those criteria. So it makes it even difficult to distinguish between a language and a dialect. But if you guys found this content useful, please like and subscribe for more content just like this. Goodbye.